was actually a very handy tool which actually helped us in identifying and fetching the test data from different sources. So the screen that you see now gives you a scaled down nomenclature of the tool. The tool as such has an input screen, and there is a output window which actually gives you the different test data records that you fetch. And it's a 5-step approach where you actually supply inputs using the different sources or using the GUI provided in the tool, and then this input is converted into an SQL statement which is executed using an SQL engine which connects to the test data server, and picks the relevant test data records. These test data records are then pushed into test management tool using a add-in or a plugin that we have prepared. So we use the test management tool Quality Center at that time, and we have prepared the uploader to Quality Center. So whatever records that we fetch, it is then uploaded directly to the Quality Center. If you look at the tool here, the tool gives you various input options. You can choose for whatever environment that you are trying to do the testing, and within that particular environment you can select what data source you probably have to look for. There could be multiple databases involved in testing, so we have split that as different data sources, and these data sources are then filtered to show only the tables limited to that data source. And once you select the table, it gives you what field you want and what is the condition that you wanted to provide. So when you give all your selections and give the logical conditions, your SQL generate engine, the create SQL engine command picks up the input values, and then it generates the SQL statement. This SQL statement is executed using a query engine, and this fetches the test data from the records specified in the input environment. So that's how this tool was developed. This tool was a simple thought process. It all our challenges, whatever we have faced, accumulated to create this particular tool. So from a tool perspective, this looks like a very simple thought process converted into a automated fetching tool. But in order to see the actual usage of this tool, you can see in our next slide that how the tool was actually used. But in a short phrase, I would say that this was a very effective tool to come up with large amount of test data supporting multiple test cases. So we will see in our next slide how the tool has helped in building queries and in fetching out the test data for multiple number of test cases. So the project what we worked was supporting the core banking systems, and I picked a solution to explain you a matrix kind of stuff which I'm showing in this picture. This matrix is basically focusing on different financial products, and there are various scenarios. There are different validity conditions specified over here. So the system was supporting the investment arm of the core banking system, and we have created n number of scenarios. Maybe I don't remember the number of scenarios, but whatever you could see is a scale down or a snapshot of the common scenarios that is applicable for the different products, different transaction type, and different validity conditions specified here. So on the whole, if you count all the X mark in the slide, there were 96 different scenarios which share certain things in common. So the common requirements are eligible customers, the customers with sufficient funds to place orders, and sufficient number of units in the respective product types like equity, bonds, structured product, ETF, and all. So in addition to that, they should also satisfy certain compliance clauses. So this is the basic search criteria that you need to probably filter out using the tool. And the tool builds a query with all these common requirements, stitched into that query, which is executed to pick out the proper data. Once the data is received, using the tool, the data needs certain customization, and then we probably have to understand which particular script requires what kind of a data. So that stitching together the data happens at the end in the tool itself before it gets uploaded into the test management tool. So this stitching of the respective test data to the test scripts is done with the help of a team. We call them as a data plugin team, and this team basically helps in stitching the data all together and then uploading into the quality center or any test management tool. So now, once the data is fetched, the other teams should not reuse the same data. So that's a very important thing. In order to avoid the data integrity or corruption of data or corruption of execution results, we used to tag the data whatever has been picked for usage. So the tool itself will update a flag in the database in a dummy column saying that this particular row of record is already used by one of the testers, so that when the query is searched again, it doesn't pick the same set of records and it avoids any overlapping of issues. So the next part will be to see where this test data tool or Deepin tool fits in the whole picture of test data management. So I'm showing you a picture where you generally have the test data management system or an architecture where a production history is subsetted and then encrypted and prepared and pushed into the test environments. That becomes the data source, and then a tool, the Deepin tool is connected to the data source, which is also connected to the test data management team. And you also can see the testing team sitting in one corner, which is accessing the test data through the tool, and direct access to the data source is avoided or was not provided. The main reason to avoid direct access is to ensure that the data integrity is not spoiled by test team. Instead of doing some update or instead of rolling back or certain commit transactions are not done, and then the test team directly uses the Deepin tool to give their respective queries and fetch the data directly from there. In addition to that, as we discussed earlier, there could be requirement to uniquely support certain data needs. In order to do that, the testing team provides their questions or requests to the data plugin team, and then the data team uses the Deepin tool, and also they have direct access to the data sources. So they pick for the respective output, customize that, and send it back to the testing team. The reason that we have given direct access to test data management team to the data source is because you have the tool and the tool has its own limitations. The limitations are, again, the tool is highly customizable, but still it has got its own limitations in the sense you can query only based on the input fields, whatever is given there, and there are open fields provided to enter your conditions, which then is converted into a syntax and executed. But still, when there comes to a complex join or complex queries that you wanted to get from different sources, then we depend on the test data management team. So that's the reason we are providing over there. Moving on to the next process. The next process is about optimization. So far we have seen what tool that we have created for our test data management in that particular project, and then slowly we evolved this optimization methodology. We wanted to be effective with the customer because we all know the customers are important and the customers provide critical inputs at the right time, but still there are issues that constitute a lot of delay. These delays are avoided when we actually do certain optimization and accelerate the testing process. So optimization here is to accelerate the data identification process. And when it comes to certain industry like banking, there is a lot of possibility to optimize preparation of test data. The reason that, the same scenario what I was shown earlier, there are 4 products and 2 different validity conditions to it, but still you could make out 96 different scenarios from there. So we have to identify the common requirements. So unless we identify the common requirements, the data fetch from the data sources will not be effective. So in order to make it more effective and more quicker, we provide or we actually evolve this mechanism of how, what, and why to optimize. So what to optimize here is that, the selection which is based on certain similar conditions that we need to identify, and some of the functionalities will have specific data which will be repeated for the same workflow or business process. Only thing is the data will keep changing based on various parameters. So those kind of requirements have to be identified, and for some of the test cases you may have to do a precondition. For example, a loan has to be created to make sure that you test the entire life cycle of the loan. So for all these things we have identified such conditions what actually can be optimized, and then we try to see why we need to optimize or how actually we can reduce the data preparation effort. So we also prepare certain queries which can be reused in future to fetch data. So those kind of things really help in reducing a lot of effort in identification. And how to optimize, we can see in detail in the next slide, but giving you that you have to be very effective in requirements analysis and grouping the requirements, and then you can use the automation tools that you use as part of the project to create test data. So these are certain things which can invariably add a lot of value proposition and reduce a lot of effort in your test data preparation process. So in our next slide, I will tell you how actually we have done the optimization.